Hey, it's the Profit Answer Man, Rocky Lalvani. If you're new to the podcast, check out my interview with Mike Michalowicz. It's episode number 2. If you want to hear about each chapter in the Profit First book, go back and listen to episodes 3 through 13. Episode 1 is the why and how. On the Profit Answer Man, we learn money mastery without all the complicated accounting mumbo-jumbo using a simple system. Your accountant is busy documenting your transactions and creating a rearview mirror of what happened. My guess is you don't even look at the reports they sent you. If you're like most business owners, you struggle with this, and it's not your fault. We aren't taught money in school, and accountants aren't taught how to be profitable. The Profit First system created by Mike Michalowicz works, and he certified me to help you implement the system in your business. Remember, the new equation is sales minus profit equals expenses. Let's face it, without cash flow, you can't pay your employees, buy needed materials, or pay your mortgage and support your family. I help you to do that and more, so you can focus on the parts of the business you love and receive the rewards for your labor and investment into your business. The stronger you are as a business owner, the more jobs you create, the better we are as a country. Small business owners are the backbone of America, and for that, you deserve to be well rewarded. Just remember, more revenue does not equal more profit. That's why we focus on the bottom line. Our guest today, Gwen, has always been interested in a wide variety of things. She'd originally planned on being a math teacher, but her immediate future took her a different path when she discovered computer programming back in the early 80s, when PCs were a novelty and dial-up was the hottest technology. I remember those days. I was playing with spreadsheets on those early computers. This led to a decade-and-a-half career spanning from those first years of dial-up to the early stages of wireless, during which she ran her own consulting company, worked as a consultant for Ernst & Young, and ran the IT department for a competitive phone company. As a consultant, she always worked with clients ranging from Sprint to a machine shop supplying high-technology wheelchair parts to the largest international distributor of bull semen. 15 years after making the logical and obvious transition into professional knitwear design and instructor, Gwen returned to her first loves of consulting, speaking, and training. As a natural educator, meeting new people and sharing her knowledge, experience, and insights is one of her greatest joys. Leveraging her breadth of operational expertise, Gwen works with coaches and consultants who have plateaued and are ready to move to the next level with a focus on improved business operations utilizing her GEARS framework. Gwen describes herself as a virtual fractional COO. Let's meet Gwen and learn more about the GEARS framework. Welcome to the Profit Answer Man, Gwen Bortner. It's great to have you join us today.
I was so excited when you invited me to join you. I am totally looking forward to our conversation.
As am I, because not only are we going to talk about Profit First, but we're going to talk about some cool other things that have to do with systemization, which is something that I truly. Before we do that, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your business?
Sure. I have, I consider myself a generalist. I am interested in all sorts of things and have a huge varied background. And so as I come to the business world, I come as a consultant, not a coach. I'm very, very clear about this. I have opinions. I have answers. I'm going to give directions. So I'm not a coach. I am a consultant. And what I typically do with my clients is I work with them as an operations partner for them. So I really work as a virtual, part-time, or fractional, depending on the term you like to use, COO. And so I'm looking at all of the operations side of the business, where most entrepreneurs come in. They're very visionary, very creative, and often have really strong marketing backgrounds. My background is kind of all of the rest of the stuff. And so that's how I work with my clients. And with a huge, varied background over many, many years, I have lots of experience about lots of different things. And to me, that is my superpower.
And it's amazing when you can find your superpower and then find people who need it and bring it all together.
Nothing is more satisfying, is it?
Nothing is more satisfying. My superpower is in spreadsheets and seeing numbers and figuring out where the leaks are and how to fix those problems. So I totally. So how did you learn about Profit First?
I came across Profit First soon after Mike published the book years and years ago. I've lost even track of when that was, and was immediately intrigued by the concept. So I'm not a reader, I'm a listener. So I got it on Audible and immediately started listening to it on my next road trip that I was on, and knew that I was going to buy the book as soon as I was done listening to it, because it was going to be a great reference that I was going to use all, just going forward. So by the time I got back from my road trip, which wasn't too terribly long, I was ready to go, and I immediately applied all of the Profit First principles into my own business, and saw a transformation happen, almost instantly, because it really changed the way I was thinking about the business. And it was interesting because there was many principles in Profit First that I had kind of applied early on, but had lost track of, we'll say. And so it was really important as a refresher in some cases, but definitely some new concepts, and it just made perfect sense. So the next thing I did was start talking to all of my clients, and it was like my number one recommended book for years and years and years and years and years, because I think it just makes such sense for most small business owners as a way to really get a handle on their finances.
So you were a numbers person going into this, which a lot of business owners aren't numbers people, but yet you still saw dramatic results, I believe, from using Profit First. What was it that kind of changed, or what was it that you were able to achieve with Profit First that you didn't have before?
Well, I think the biggest piece, which I really appreciated, because you're right, I've always been a numbers person, and I actually like doing my accounting, which I know it makes me weird, but there's got to be a few of us out there. But what it really did for me is I realized that I wasn't managing my spending to what my income was. And by looking at the percentages and the way that they lay out in Profit First, it made it really easy to see where I needed to start putting constraints on things. And I've always been a big fan of knowing that constraints actually lead to creativity. And so for me, that was a huge piece. And the other piece is that it made me really pay attention to what I was paying myself, which at the time was not very much. And it was like, no, I should be making more. And I was looking at, where was I spending money, and where could I transfer money out of someone else's pocket back into my own pocket.
And I think that's an important thing, because we're always told in business, spend, spend, spend. And I think that's horrible advice. But if you're going to spend, you might as well spend on yourself, right? Why don't you pay yourself well? Then there's absolutely no reason you shouldn't. And the stronger you are, I think, financially, and the less stressed you are financially, the more valuable you become to your business. So paying yourself has dividends in a better employee in yourself.
It really does. And, one of the things I know Mike says is, who's the most valuable employee in your business? And we often forget that that's us. And we pay everybody better than we pay ourselves. But we really are the most valuable employee in the business. So we need to be paying ourselves, especially if we really are still in the business, as part of delivering of the services.
And that's true. At some point, though, we can work ourselves out of the business and just be a business owner, in which case we
different
will get
thing.
Profits, and it's a different thing.
Exactly.
But if you're working in the business, then you deserve to be rewarded. And that's one of the things that I hear my people say sometimes when they first come to me. Everybody in my company makes more than me. I don't understand why this is. I'm like, well,
right, exactly.
Let's fix that. So what you said, you recommended this book many times. What are the results you've seen from some of the people who you've recommended it to, or some of your clients?
What I see is much of the same thing that I saw for myself. First is they realize that they're spending money on things that they don't need to be spending money on. Sometimes it's what I call slippage, where something has just happened and they just continue to do it, even though it's no longer providing value. Sometimes it's it only costs, fill in the blank. And so they just spend the money, not realizing it's like, but are you actually getting that value back out of that money? So the biggest thing I see with all of my clients is having that constraint where they actually have to make a choice about what they're doing with the money, as opposed to reacting. They're being proactive about the decisions with the money. And the result for all of them that I've worked with has been that they're putting more money in their pocket. Because even before I became a Profit Certified professional, I would recommend they hire a Profit First Certified professional. And I would just support it on the back end, on the operations side, to make sure that they were, continuing to do what they needed to do. But in every case, they're always putting more money in their own pocket and reducing their expenses and making more proactive choices instead of reactive choices.
And I always like to say you've got to work on your business, not in your business. And I think that's kind of the same concept, is you're thinking about what you're doing in the business. You're not just throwing cash at your problems, which never seems to work out well, although it's the thing that everybody tries to do, or they get distracted by the latest shiny object and they think that is going to solve their problems, but that is not always the truth.
Yeah, most of my clientele are very strong visionaries, highly creative, lots of ideas. So the whole shiny object thing you mentioned is a huge problem. And so putting that constraint to say, yeah, you can spend money on this, but then you can't spend money on that, really makes the process go a little bit differently.
And speaking of visionaries, I'm a big fan of EOS. And EOS is, you've got your visionary and then you've got your integrators. It sounds like you're an integrator. I'm pretty much of an integrator on the financial side as well. You need all the different people in the different seats to be able to help make things really, really do well. And when you've got that balance of integrator, visionary, the results are usually astounding. But not everyone figures out how to do that.
No, it's really true. And I too am a big fan of EOS. Most of the clients I work with are too small to really implement EOS in its, full incarnation. But there's so many really great principles in there, and that visionary integrator concept, when I was first introduced to that, which was my first introduction into EOS, was through the book Rocket Fuel. That was when I found my home. It was like, oh, I'm an integrator. It was very, very clear that was my role. And once I realized that, it made knowing what I needed to do and how I could be of service in the world so much more obvious to myself.
Gino was just on one of our mastermind calls, and he actually said, when you look at the population, 4% are creatives. You know what percent are integrators?
It's really small. Wasn't it like 2 or something, or 3?
It's 1%.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think when you find that very good visionary with that very good integrator, it really turns into rocket fuel, and it works well.
It really does, and that really is the primary service that I provide for people, is to be their integrator when they're not yet at a financial position to hire a full-time integrator, but to come in with that same vision, that integrator vision, as opposed to that visionary vision for the business, and help them stay clear on what they need to be working on and how they need to function. And Profit First is a great element of one of the tools in my toolkit to help make that happen.
That is very true. So kind of switching gears, I've heard you say this, and I guess it has to do with when a lot of businesses hit a plateau that they can't get through. I've heard you say marketing is not always the problem that needs to be fixed. What did you mean by that?
So it's one of my big kind of controversial statements. So often people think like, well, if we just made more sales, we need more marketing, we need to get more visibility. And often when people are stuck, that's really not the problem, because if they're stuck without customers, yeah, okay, then that's probably the problem. But if they're stuck with customers, what's probably happened is their operations really aren't functioning in a way that allow them to grow. Because often their marketing isn't broken, so they don't actually need to fix it. But visionaries typically really are good at marketing, and they like marketing. And so we all tend to want to look at the thing that we want to do. And so we say, let's do more marketing and see if we can get more sales. And if we get more sales, then that's going to solve our problem. But if your problem is cash flow, and this is another thing that Mike talks about in Profit First, is increasing your sales doesn't necessarily increase your profit if you're not really managing your cash flow the way you need to do. And so to me, this is just another variant of that exact same issue of trying to increase your profitability by increasing your sales isn't going to work if the problem isn't really your sales. You can be profitable at any point. We need to first work on fixing the piece that will actually make you profitable. Then we can work on increasing your sales.
And so that's one of the first things I do with many clients is we actually dig into their offerings and we look at what it costs them to deliver their products. And a lot of times it's a quite eye-opening exercise that goes to show them that many of the things they thought were profitable, every time they sell one, they lose money because it's not priced appropriately, or the inputs are too expensive to be able to do it, or they just miscalculated. And the other thing that sometimes finds is that there are certain parts of their business that are highly profitable. And I'll be honest, it takes us a couple of months of tracking, just deep diving in to try and figure out which is which. Because as you said, if I have a profit problem and I increase sales, but it's costing me more to deliver it, you die of a slow death, right? How come I have all these sales and I'm making less and less money?
Yeah, I actually know of a situation where by increasing marketing, they bankrupted their business. Mm-hmm. Because they were refusing to look at the operational issues. And, every time you try and bring up the operational issues, like, no, but we need to put more money into marketing. It was like, no, you don't. And they were able to increase sales, but they increased it to the point that they went bankrupt.
And I know, so some of my clients are very marketing driven, and the marketing is what drives their revenue. And so what we do is we create a marketing budget, and then we see how well that marketing budget drives revenue. And if it's not doing a good job, then we've got an early warning signal that, hey, you're starting to pay more for marketing than you said you were going to. Your messaging is off. Let's fix that. Or let's take a look at it and see what else is possibly wrong.
Well, and the other piece is, in what you're talking about, and it makes perfect sense, is a lot of people don't really know what their marketing generates in revenue. And so measuring that is huge.
That it is. And depending on the business, we use a whole bunch of different tools to make that happen. So you've come up with an acronym that you use to discuss many of the areas that you focus on. And it's the word GEARS. Kind of makes sense, right? You're putting together all these little systems and building the business machine out. So let's start with G. G is goods and services. What do we need to be focused on here?
For goods and services, what I look at for my service offering is really looking at the product mix, looking at the profitability of the products as you're talking about, looking at the business model, because often where I'm working with people is they're looking to scale, and so the business model that they've been using will not work into the future to scale to the level that they're looking to scale. And in cases where I'm working with clients with physical product, we're also looking at inventory, stocking levels, and all of that kind of background of the product to say to you, are you stocking enough? Are you stocking too much? Inventory turns, all of those kind of things. So that's the G, the goods and services of the business.
And so what I'm seeing right now, we have a global supply chain disaster. And so some of my clients, it's 120 to 160 days out to get product in. And they've got to put up cash to do that. So that's tying up a lot of cash. And then it's also, if I've got to bring in this big order, how do I time my orders so that I've got constant product to sell? Because you run out of product and all of a sudden you're stuck. There's no money coming in anymore. Now you can't order more product. And we also even put through to make sure that as they sell product, we are putting aside a portion of that's attributed to cost of goods into an account. So when it comes time to place a big order, they don't fuss over how am I going to pay for this. The money's sitting in the account. They go, oh, look, there's money in the account. I can order more stuff. Makes life much less stressful.
Yeah, I work with a number of retailers in very small, very boutique-y businesses. And one of the things that many of them have done when I do this analysis is their inventory levels are way too high based on what their sales are. And so using the same type of tool that you're talking about in Profit First, we set aside a percentage for, replenishing inventory, but we actually set a smaller percentage than what we would typically set aside because they actually need to be reducing their inventory over time. And back to constraints are a really good thing. So now we aren't just buying inventory because we like it. We're making choices to say, I've only got X number of dollars. Where do I want to spend those dollars? What dollars are going to be more likely to generate new dollars for me in sales?
Not only new dollars, but profitable dollars.
Well, yes, absolutely.
Let's move on to E, effective leadership.
So effective leadership for me is back to the clients I typically work with are in that transition process of scaling. And so they're moving from being in the business, 95% of the time to wanting to be out of the business, to be working on the business at least 50% of the time. And that's a pretty big transition from a mindset sort of issue. And so that's really what effective leadership is all about. It's about making that mindset shift of being the doer to being the CEO, to being the leader, to understanding what the transition is and what the roles are, and helping communicate all of the things that are in their vision and in their head into their workers so that they don't have to be in the business all the time.
And you have to have the right systems, processes, and procedures in place to do that, because what can be a very small change in a small company, as it grows and balloons, turns into big problems very quickly. And so that really needs to get locked down. I see as companies grow, they start to lose that tightness in the way that the business is run, and the mistakes just compound out, just like money compounds.
Well, and the other thing that I see very typically that happens is owners are used to being able to make all the decisions because it is their business. And so they aren't necessarily as consistent as they think they are. Oh, well, yeah, but I do this thing for Fred because Fred and I have been doing business for so long. And oh, but we do this other thing for Sally because Sally has this special, situation. And all of a sudden you realize that the thing you thought was a system is actually just a whole bunch of exceptions.
Yeah. Always something. Next up is accountability. And I didn't realize when I got into this business, I didn't realize how much of the value I brought was actually in accountability.
It's amazing because as, small business owners, often solopreneurs, the only person that they've really been accountable to is themselves. And although we like to believe that we're accountable to ourselves, most of us aren't actually very good at that. When, if we're really, truly honest, I know I'm not. And so having some outside accountability to say, this is the thing I'm working toward, and these are the steps that I'm taking, and someone saying, how are you doing on that? Or why did that not happen? And to really be a partner in the conversation. One of the things that my clients often say about me is that I'm very non-judgmental in my accountability because I don't own the result. They do. But I want to say, is there a reason this happened? Is there a reason we aren't doing this? Is there something at a root cause that we need to be addressing that I can do from an outside perspective that's really hard to do when the only person you're accountable to is yourself? It's easy for us to get funny stories in our head that may not be quite as true.
Well, and I think for a lot of people, they know what they have to do, but if it's not something they want to do, they just ignore it. And having to sit there with someone else and say, when are we going to finally take care of this? And what do we need to do to make it happen? Is big. It's just like going to the gym. You go to the gym, you have a trainer, you do more sets and reps. It's just the reality of the situation. They push you a little further.
It really is. And sometimes it's just about having, like using your trainer example, having someone be able to say, oh, I see that you can't do it this way. Here's a way that we can modify that and make it work for you.
Those aha moments happen all the time in my calls. People are like, I'm stuck with this. I don't know what to do. I go, did you try that? They're like, oh, that's so simple. I don't know why I didn't think of that. Now let's just go do it. And on we go. It just gets rid of all the friction.
Yep,
and that's
exactly.
A big part of it, is removing the friction, the process and from the decision making.
Absolutely.
Next up is the R, resource management.
And for me, the resource management is looking at all the types of resources. Most of my businesses that I work with, the two biggest resources are money, thus profit first, and people. And making sure, using some more EOS terminology, having the right people in the right seat, and that the structure is really working the way that you need to have the structure work to be able to move forward. Now, resources will also include things like, are we really using the right technology for where you are and what you're trying to accomplish? We'll also look at resources in the way of, office space and things of that nature when it makes sense. A lot of my clients are actually, working out of their home long before COVID hit. It was a pre-COVID situation, not a post-COVID situation. But we look at all of those resources to say, what are the best uses of those resources? Are we maximizing those resources? And can we make adjustments to those resource allocations to get better use out of them for the business? Whether it's maximizing a resource or reducing the use of something, or just making, minor adjustments like we do in Profit First to continue to make that adjustment moving forward to get them to where they want to be.
And this is the one I think people don't understand. Resource management takes time to make changes. And I tell people, this is not overnight success. This is a journey. It might take us, and I know Mike even says it takes 10 quarters to really bring about a lot of the change. And that takes time, and it also takes commitment to keep going. But those small little changes, quarter after quarter after quarter, add up to massive differences over time.
They really do. I'm now not going to remember what the resource was, but I was listening to a book not too long ago, and it was Atomic Habits. And he talked about that if you can just make a 1% improvement, it compounds just like 1% interest compounds on money. And a 1% improvement in your own personal habits is not that big of an improvement, not really. But if you're doing that day after day after day after day, or week after week, or month after month, it's the same thing. All of a sudden, there's a hugely notable difference in behaviors, just like there is in your finances, like we do with Profit First. A little of 1% adjustment here and a 2% adjustment there, compounded over time, all of a sudden can be, thousands, if not tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars.
That it can. It's little by little, and I think that's really the secret, because it's easy to make small changes, and small changes will stick over time, versus trying to do something big and you blow up the entire system, or you end up with a lot of friction.
Exactly.
And the last letter is S for systems, one of my favorite.
Well, and systems really is just the overall encompassing. I mean, we've talked about it and all of the others. There's systems around all of those other things. But the main thing that I talk about with systems is making sure that we start getting consistent systems, and we're documenting those systems, and that we have ways to keep them updated as they change. Because as times continue, there will be reasons that things need to be changed. Sometimes you're going to be going with a different vendor. Sometimes you're going to be purchasing more. Sometimes you're going to change the way you're onboarding clients. There's all sorts of things that can happen over time. But not only making sure that they're consistent, but that they're documented and that they're updated so that they're able to be useful on a go-forward basis. And then whenever possible, also automated. So that you don't have to be using human resources to make sure that they're always getting done.
And Mike's got a whole nother book on that called Clockwork.
He does. It's absolutely true.
It teaches all about the systems. Is there anything else that we should have talked about today that we didn't get to?
Well, those are the ones that I focus on from the operations side. Obviously, there's lots of other pieces. One of my friends that I work with, that I partner with on my clients, focuses on the whole customer experience, and she takes it from the marketing clear to the onboarding. And so, there's so many other aspects to any other business. But this operations piece often is the piece that gets overlooked, because it's not as fun. It's not necessarily as sexy. It's not as forward facing. It's all kind of behind the scenes in the dark. But boy, can it be really important.
Very, very true. If people would like to learn more about you or your services, where is the best place for them to check you out?
Best place is at gwenbortner.com. And it's it will cover all of the things, and it's the easiest way to reach me. You can find me at gwenbortner.com. If you want to email me, if you've got any questions, I'm always happy to chat.
And I will put a link to the website in the show notes to make it easy for everyone to find you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Rocky, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
I love chatting with systems people. At the end of the day, your business should have clear systems in place. At the core, every business is a math problem looking to get solved. How much do we need to spend on leads? How do we convert them? How many sales? Do they repeat? What's the cost to deliver the product or service? How much do we have to pay off in debt? Play with these levers, and over time, we can make you highly profitable. For more information on how Gwen helps her clients grow profitable businesses and get down-to-earth business advice, visit her website, gwenbortner.com. I'll put a link in the show notes. If you need help, ask. Reach out to Gwen. Reach out to me. Let's help you become financially strong and make your business thrive. Remember, you don't need more resources. You need to be more resourceful. We focus on the bottom line. If you want a done-for-you service, you can have me as your Chief Profitability Officer. Because you have your zone of genius and want to spend your time doing what you love. I only work with a handful of clients, so they get my full attention. I work with business owners who have or are growing to $500,000 to $5 million in revenue. You can use the scheduling link in the show notes to get on my calendar for a good fit conversation to see if I'm the right person to support you and how I can help you. If you want to learn about living the life of your dreams, check out my other podcast, Richer Soul. As we close out, let's repeat the mantra. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. Have an abundant and profitable week.